Welcome in On Deck. Hope everybody can hear me. We got a lot to talk about, but first, if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video. Get it out to as many Braves fans as we can get it to. Go ahead, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell for notifications so that you know the moment I go live and I drop anything else. So again, we have a lot to talk about today in spring training. Some big games happen, some big losses happen, but also some things of note that I think would be good for anyone to know. Got some headlines in just a couple minutes, and we're going to talk about just everything going on in Braves country. As always, this video is sponsored by Llerandi Gloves, and Llerandi Gloves is, of course, a sponsor of mine. Their glove is actually right there, but I'm going to go ahead and toss their information up on the screen. If you guys haven't gone and checked their website out, you're missing out. I promise you, go check them out. They got high-quality gloves, affordable prices. You'll be so happy that you got them. I promise. Go check it out. It makes a good Christmas gift. I know it's a bit early. Makes a good birthday gift. And Little League Baseball will be starting very soon if it hasn't already. So I promise you, go check it out. It's worth your time. Anyway, let's talk about what's going on in the Braves right now today. The biggest headline today, Max Fried has possibly been exposed to coronavirus. And he will not start tomorrow because of it. However, he has not tested positive. It's nothing really to worry about. I think it's really only for precaution. And it's unclear who's going to start in his place. The rumor is possibly Kyle Wright on 4 days rest. But they may not want to overuse him, so you might see somebody a little bit abnormal take the mound tomorrow at spring training. But we do have some things to talk about that have happened over this past week. First off, Ian Anderson took the mound for the first time in spring training, and it was a bit of an up-and-down appearance. 2 quick outs, both flyouts to start the game, and then he walked Jorge Polanco and then struck out Miguel Sano to end the inning. That inning was pretty good. In the second inning, he had to get out of some trouble, though. Started with a ground out, but then proceeded to give up 3 consecutive hits, the only hits on the day. With the bases loaded, he struck out Jose Miranda for the second out, and then Max Kepler actually lined out to bring it into Ian Anderson's day. He'd finished with 2 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. So not a bad day, but there is an opportunity to grow, and it gave him an opportunity to work out of trouble, which is a good thing always in spring training. But you would like to see a little bit less base runners as time goes on throughout spring training and as more innings are thrown. So I'm not really worried about the starting pitching. As much as I've said that, I'm not really worried about Ian Anderson. The guy showed off what he had. I think as long as he brings what he had last year, potentially better, I think he'll be fine. What was more interesting to me about that game, specifically, was the relievers. First off, Will Smith relieved Ian Anderson to come in the 3rd inning, and he had a clean inning with a strikeout. That's a very encouraging sign for a guy who wants to bounce back after a year of struggling to keep the long ball in the yard. So we all know what Will Smith is, right? We knew he was an all-star before he ever came to the Braves. We signed him to be a premier reliever. I think you're going to see that this year. I think last year was a very strange situation, obviously, with everything going on in the world, and especially in the world of baseball. It was a very strange year. I think he had a tough year because of a lot of that. So I hopefully we'll see a more normalized year for him, and especially a more normalized year just in terms of, around baseball and around the world. Nate Jones would follow him. He'd have a clean inning, no strikeouts, no walks, just kind of, he had a clean inning. Kyle Muller, though, appeared later that game, and this is what I've been waiting for, and this is what I'm talking about. His day basically went like this. 2 strikeouts to lead off, not a ball thrown in those entire 2 at-bats, and with 2 outs, Max Kepler would single on a ground ball on the first pitch. Byron Buxton would single on a ground ball on the first pitch, and then Jorge Polanco would pop out on the first pitch. So he got out of the inning clean, gave up 2 hits, but their first pitch. So what I get out of that, of course this game wasn't broadcasted live, but what I get out of that is that he pounds the strike zone, and that's what that should tell you, is he pounds the strike zone. I can live with that. If you give up a base hit here and a base hit there, I can live with that, right? You're not walking a lot of guys. So he came in, I thought he had a great first inning, and then the second inning, it was more of a lot of that. First pitch, Kyle Schmidt would ground out. The second batter would strike out, and he was looking good. He must have hit his pitching quota around that time. He got taken out before he faced the last batter of that inning, but he finished with 1.2 innings pitched, 2 hits, and 3 strikeouts. So I see no reason why, if that trend were to continue, he could not be a bullpen piece to start the season or a month in, or be brought up halfway through the season, or be brought up right before the postseason. I think there is all the potential in the world to see Kyle Muller be a part of the bullpen. I don't think you'll see him be a part of the starting rotation. More on that later, but I don't think you're going to see a lot more. You're not going to see him in the starting rotation, but I do think that you could easily see him in the bullpen. Jacob Webb would come to finish that game off, 3 up, 3 down, no problems. So, I thought it was really interesting to see the bullpen, using some of those B guys, as you mentioned in there, Justin Redmond. A lot of those B guys are coming in the bullpen. A lot of those B guys are actually playing right now, and I think it's very interesting to see. Offensively, the Braves flat out put runs on the board, a lot of ABC baseball to drive the score up 6-0. But a big assist to Travis d'Arnaud for a 2-run shot in the first, his first at-bat of spring training, by the way. That guy is an absolute star, and there's a reason he's going to start the season at the catching position. There's a reason everybody's talking about bringing him back next season. The debate is who's going to be his backup. So, you've seen a lot of William Contreras. Lately, you've seen a little bit of Shea Langoliers, which has been fairly interesting. I think those two guys are the future at the catching position. You may or may not see Travis d'Arnaud sign an extension after this season. More on that later. I said the same thing about Marcell Ozuna, and I was completely wrong. So we'll see what happens at the end of the year. Depends on how good of a year he has this year. Obviously, last year he was more than worth signing. So that was interesting. In the second game this week, I believe on Wednesday, Smyly had his debut. Pitched 2 scoreless innings, 3 strikeouts, only 1 hit. He said that he felt uneasy and rusty. He didn't look like it. He performed very nicely. And look, this is a major upgrade from what we had last year. Just depth alone, right? And Drew Smyly, if that's your number 5 pitcher, right? If that's the worst one in your rotation, I'll take it, okay? I think that is a very good thing. Of course, the Braves ended up losing this game 8-1. Again, in spring training, the score does not matter. I don't know how many times I got to say that. It does not matter, in my opinion. Obviously, you'd like to win as many as possible, but I would much rather you test those B-plus players and give them a shot, test and see who's going to be worth moving into your roster. So, again, I thought Smyly did very well. Hopefully that'll continue. Hopefully he'll make it through spring training and be healthy all year long, unlike some of those signees we had last year. So offensively, Wednesday's game was forgettable. However, Ozzie Albies did homer, which is nice to see. And look, any homer's a good homer, but Ozzie Albies homering makes my day. Reason being, you got to think that guy's looking to bounce back. Last year, of course, we were missing him for a lot of the regular season, and not that our offense needed any help, but having a guy like Ozzie Albies come back into your lineup right before the postseason is like a huge free agent addition right before the postseason. So it's a good thing to see out of him early on in spring training. Like I said, you got to think he wants to bounce back, and I think he's going to be just fine in doing that. So, I think there's a lot more, that's going to happen. Bryce Wilson came out today, and he had the start, and he looked pretty sharp too. 2 innings pitched, 1 hit, no walks, 2 strikeouts. So, he wants to be in the starting rotation. He was quoted today by Braves media as saying that he wants to be in it more than anything. And I think he's probably going to wind up in the bullpen. And that's not a knock on him. I still think it's a possibility he winds up in that starting rotation pending Mike Soroka's arrival time. Whenever that is to happen, if he's not in for a month and a half, who's to say Bryce Wilson doesn't get a shot in the rotation? But I think he and Kyle Wright are destined for the bullpen whenever Soroka arrives, if everyone in the starting rotation remains healthy. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Max Fried, all-star last year, all-star caliber, Cy Young competitor last year. Ian Anderson, arguably a Rookie of the Year candidate last year. Mike Soroka coming back. Charlie Morton, former all-star. And Drew Smyly, a guy that has no reason to think he couldn't be a starter. It's his job to lose at that point, and it's Bryce Wilson's to win. So we'll see what happens. I really think he's destined for the bullpen, and I think it's good for the bullpen to have a guy like Bryce Wilson who was basically forced into adjusting to Major League Baseball. I mean, the guy was forced into a postseason, and he had a great moment, and he's looking to carry that over. Hopefully Kyle Wright will take last year's postseason and learn from it. But I think, who am I to tell him he can't do it at that point? But I think he's got all the potential in the world to be in the starting rotation, at least for the first month, if Soroka's not there. But more on the offense for a second. We got to talk about Austin Riley. Austin Riley, at one point today, was 5 for 7 in spring training. He went over 2 after that, so he's 5 for 9 right now. It's a small sample size, and it's not the stat that I'm focusing on. but 5 for 9 is pretty good. He's hitting above 500 in spring training. Again, small sample size, you can't judge it. But Austin Riley was the guy that I told you was the guy I was focusing on in spring training. He's the guy I wanted to see the most. Reason being, he's the guy that needs the most at-bats. And what a surprise. He has the most of them. Yeah, 9 at-bats leads the Braves at the moment. Austin Riley has those 9. We've seen the most out of him, and he's done a lot of good with it. Hopefully he'll continue to see a lot of at-bats, and I think Austin Riley could be a candidate to be a major player this year. I think offensively he's going to finally break out. Keep in mind, this is his first full season. His first chance at a full season. Obviously last year wasn't, and before that it was his rookie year. He got called up in May. So I want to see him as much as possible. The Braves obviously wanted to see him as much as possible, giving him that many at-bats, and I think it's going to be a good thing for him. Austin Riley has all the potential in the world. I've told you guys that I don't know how many times. I think if he can finally break out this year, it'll be great for his career and great for the Braves in a championship drive. And in case you're wondering, following him in the most at-bats, you got Inciarte, Langoliers, and Sandoval with 7 at-bats apiece. So to me, what that says, and then you got Kipnis and a couple others, what that says is these early games, remember how I told you the score doesn't matter? I'm serious. These early games are all about figuring out who's going to be your bench bat. Jake Lamb, Pablo Sandoval, Ender Inciarte, who's it going to be, right? Maybe carry on Shea Langoliers. Maybe carry on, it's also about giving experience, and I think that's more so where Langoliers is at, because if you're looking at a backup catcher, I think that's probably going to be between William Contreras and Alex Jackson. I want to lean towards William Contreras if I'm being just completely honest with you, but the rumor right now is that Alex Jackson's going to get that job at least for the first month. That's the rumor. I don't know how much of that I believe. I think that job gets won in spring training, but we'll see. I think William Contreras is the more valuable prospect between him and Alex Jackson. I think his upside's a lot more. But, Langoliers is only a couple years away, and I think it's a matter of time before we see him. So, I really think spring training, like I've said from the get-go, is all about figuring out what you got, what you can do with it, and so on. So, again, really good things out of spring training. Personally, I think obviously we'd like to see Max Fried tomorrow. Unfortunately, with COVID and everything else, that's not going to happen. But, like I said, it's precautionary. It was good to see Ian Anderson. Hopefully he'll grow and gain a little bit more consistency. And consistency is one of the hardest things to gain. Kyle Wright is a perfect example. Bryce Wilson's a perfect example. Consistency is one of the hardest things to gain. Hopefully Ian will be able to do that quickly. I think that, Ian's not really the one I'm worried about there. And good to see a lot of new faces. A lot of faces that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Kyle Muller, I mentioned. Shea Langoliers, I mentioned. William Contreras, those guys. It's good to see those prospects. It's new faces, along with some of the guys who, the starters. You've seen Acuna and Albies. Acuna, by the way, noticeably slimmer. He had a base hit the other day. This is it right here. Acuna is noticeably slimmer, but this should have been a single, and the speed is there. Obviously, it was a bad throw. Good throw probably gets him, but it wasn't a good throw, and he turned it into a double. So Acuna is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. I think he wants to get back to where his level, where in his mind his level should be. Keep in mind, it was about this time last year, he was asked if he was going to go 40-40 again. He was asked if he was going to try to go 40-40 again. And of course the answer is yes, but he said, I want to go 50-50. So 50 stolen bases, 50 homers. I'm keeping track as of right now. So I think it'll be a fun thing to see out of him this year. But, you got your Freddies, you got your Acunas. We haven't seen Freddie take the field yet. We've seen Ozuna. Not much of him, but we have seen Ozuna. And, Freddie will be around sooner rather than later. Of course, he just, his family just had twins. So it might be a minute. But he is at spring training. He has, been in the cage. He has taken some swings. And, look, Freddie is the guy that I am least worried about. They asked him last year. I remember like it was yesterday almost. He pretty much said, like, at spring training, he needs a few swings, a few games, and then he's good. So Freddie's the last guy I'm worried about, not to mention he's a reigning National League MVP. So I'm not worried about Freddie. I'm not worried about Ozuna. I'm not worried about Acuna. The guys that I'm most curious about are the guys like Austin Riley. Ozzy Albies to some degree, in terms of bouncing back. Obviously, he was hurt a lot of last year throughout the regular season. I would like to see a bounce back year from him, but I'm not worried about him. I'm not really worried about the starting pitching, surprisingly. And how many teams that had the situation the Braves had last year in starting pitching would be able to say that the year following, right? How many teams were able to adjust their starting pitching so radically? Not very many. So I really think that the Braves have all the potential in the world to go to another postseason, and I think they will for years to come. And I think that's a big part of it, these young guys, right? That's why I'm so intrigued by a Bryce Ball, by a Huascar Noah. There's tons of prospects within the Braves organization to be excited about. I think Trey Harris, Michael Harris, those two guys, outfielders. Everybody's worried about outfield depth. Drew Waters had a hit today. I really think that you got to look deeper than what we're seeing on the field. You got to look at what the future has. And the Braves have a lot when it comes to future. So I think it's going to be just fine. I think you're going to see a lot more consistency this year out of guys like Austin Riley, more consistency out of your bullpen. When I say bullpen, I mean Kyle Wright, Bryce Wilson specifically. Other than that, Tyler Matzik came out today. He gave up a run, but it wasn't a blowout by any stretch. A.J. Minter looked fine the other night. I think there's still a possibility the Braves go get Shane Green, even though the money's tight. And make no mistake, the money probably is tight. It doesn't take the genius to figure out that no attendance revenue is going to drop where you're at. But I don't think the Braves are so drastically broke at the moment compared to other teams. I think they had to go public because they're affiliated with Liberty Media, and that's where they're at. But again, I think it's going to be a more consistent year, and just the fact that it's a 162 game season is going to make all the difference, I think. So we're going to go through some of your comments in just a few minutes. Obviously, super chats is how you get to me quicker than the other average person. But that's just priority. It's the best I can do, guys. I got a lot of comments to get through. But yeah, one more time, look, go ahead, like this video, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell for notifications so we can get it out there. I do appreciate it. And it does make my life a lot easier. But I am happy to be here with you today. Happy to be talking about some Braves baseball actually happening on the field. Let's get into some of your comments. Jameson says it has been an interesting first few spring training games for our Atlanta Braves. For sure. It's absolutely been some interesting days. And, a lot of people have been worried about the losses for some reason. It's nothing to be worried about. These games don't matter. I think that obviously I'm more concerned about individual performance. These games don't matter. They take pitchers out after 20 pitches if they want to. It's really not, that big of a deal. So I really think that it's a matter of time before, one, we get to a normal season, and two, the Braves are winning ball games. So I'm really not worried about it personally. But appreciate it. If you got a question, by the way, get it in. It stinks that Max Fried can't make his spring training game tomorrow. Yeah, it does, but again, it's just precautionary. It's the circumstances we're living in. So, Justin Redmond says a lot of B guys playing today. Saw that one a little bit earlier and mentioned it. Yeah, as they should, because I think B stands for bench and bullpen. I think you got to test your bench and bullpen. Look, at the end of the day, your star players are great. Acuna, Albies, Max Fried, Mike Soroka, they're all great. All your stars are fantastic. Marcelo Zuna, Christian Pache, but somebody's got to back them up. Somebody's got to be able to hit for the pitcher. Somebody's got to be able to come in the 8th inning and shut it down when you're stretched thin. And the more depth you can have, the better. And that's what they're testing right now. Don't make no mistake. The guys that are going to play every day are going to get theirs. They're going to get their at-bats. But I think it's the best that we're testing the bench and bullpen. We're narrowing it down, and I think that's what we got to do. Mab asks, Tyler, do you think the Braves should be in on Yoenis Cespedes? I read they scouted him this week. Could or should Cespedes fill our last bench spot, or does him fighting wild? Here's the thing. With Yoenis Cespedes, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not up to date on him and his recent trouble with whatever. But Yoenis Cespedes is an interesting player just in general. He's pretty much home run or nothing. That's just is what it is. He's had a tough last few years. He's won the home run derby like too many times. He's a very interesting player. I don't blame the Braves in scouting him out. Scouting him out's a very lax term. They scout everybody out, So obviously they were at the site But why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you go see what he has? If he's showing you something different, obviously players can improve, practice and get better. If he's showing you something, maybe. I wouldn't necessarily mind if they gave him a minor league deal and let him test out through spring training, similar to what they did with Jose Bautista, who was, a little bit past his prime, and they gave him a shot. Obviously, there was Blue Jay connections there, but, I wouldn't mind that. I'm not necessarily ready to say he deserves or, he deserves a bench spot, because I think a lot of guys on the Braves right now deserve a bench spot. Jake Lamb is a guy that I think could do it. There's a lot of guys out there right now that deserve that opportunity. I think Camargo will likely be a bench player. Ender Inciarte will likely be a bench player, maybe. And of course you got to have a backup catcher. There's not that many spots. I don't know that I'm ready to say he's earned it. Could he? Yeah. I mean, who am I to say he couldn't? The guy has, impressed a lot of people in Major League Baseball before. He's 35 years old, though, so I think the Braves would probably be better off in giving that to a young guy and letting him get some experience, but we'll see. Kyle Muller looked filthy with that power fastball. Yes, he did. Struck out 2 to start off his appearance and never really went down. Did very good. Travis is underrated. He raked last year. You're talking about Travis d'Arnaud, and look, d'Arnaud doesn't get a lot of credit. You're right. He is underrated. Travis d'Arnaud, to me, was the best hitting catcher last year. I might be wrong, but when there was a guy that I needed in the batter's box at the catching position, there is not one guy I would choose over Travis d'Arnaud at the moment. That can change, obviously, if he has a bad year this year and it was a short season, but he is underrated. He may get re-signed, but we'll see. If they make a trade and trade Shane Langeliers, I would probably say, yeah, he's going to get re-signed. I just don't see that happening, and I think they're running out of spots to put people. There, Jesus. I hope that answered your question. Cespedes got multiple season-ending knee injuries. Yeah. Then he didn't tell his own team. Yeah, he had a weird falling out with the Mets. Cespedes did. But, again, who am I to say that he can't come back? We've seen crazier things. I mean, I don't mind the Braves necessarily checking him out. Does it mean they're going to sign him? Probably not. A guy that I'll throw out there that I'm surprised hasn't really come back to the forefront to some degree is Yasiel Puig. When was the last time you heard about Yasiel Puig? It's been a while. The last time I remember talking about him was when he signed to the Braves, and then all of a sudden he just wasn't with the Braves anymore. And obviously the Braves didn't necessarily need him. They needed starting pitching more than anything. But the only reason he wasn't an Atlanta Brave to finish off the season last year was a coronavirus test. So it's just amazing to me that we haven't heard anything else. And I don't think he's done. I think he's got a lot left in the tank. He's obviously would be a great bench addition. He may be a good outfield addition. You got a young outfielder in Christian Pache. I just don't think the Braves necessarily need him anymore. But it surprised me that another team hasn't reached out, right? Maybe they have, but we haven't really heard a whole lot about it. That's just been relatively surprising. You want my thoughts on in-person game attendance at Truist Park? I think it needs to happen. I think MLB can't really afford and the Braves can't really afford to not have an attendance revenue this year, whether it be 30%, 50%, 75%, 80%, 100%. They need to have some people in the stands. And I think it just makes an overall better environment. I wouldn't want to play to an empty stadium. I wouldn't want to do anything to, any kind of performance like that with no surround sound would be horrible to play through, personally, in my opinion. Contreras and Langeliers are good to block. I assume you mean that you mean behind the plate there. DH will be good for the Braves in the future. Yeah, it's real unfortunate they don't have it this year. I think they probably could have done some good with it. I think if they had a DH, I think it would have been a lot easier to sign Ozuna, even though they did. I think that would have been an easier transition for most people to accept. Not the Braves. Obviously, they made up their mind pretty quick. but it would have been an easier transition for everybody to accept, okay, Ozuna doesn't have to be in left field. We can play someone else out there. And I think it would have allowed, obviously, us to add another star player, potentially, maybe a Puig, maybe, whoever it may be. But the DH will be good for the Braves in the future, I think, especially considering we got Bryce Ball. Somebody asked me last show if I would take Bryce Ball over Freddie Freeman if Bryce Ball won the minor league Triple Crown, and I said no. But if there's a DH, I'll put Bryce Ball at the DH for sure. And I do think it'll be good for him. They got a lot of kids, in the minor leagues that are looking to break through that don't necessarily have a spot at the moment. Drew Waters, outfielder, doesn't necessarily have a spot at the moment. Bryce Ball, first baseman, doesn't have a spot at the moment. There's a lot of those situations, and there's a lot more outfielders. Trey Harris, Michael Harris. They may be trade bait specifically because no one's going to replace Ronald Acuna, no one's going to replace Marcell Ozuna, and no one's, in theory, going to replace Christian Pache at the moment. So there's a lot of guys that I think could use that DH, and it would be a way to include another player on your roster. And I think the American League, that's one thing that I like about the American League. And last year sort of changed my perspective on the whole DH. Obviously, the Braves' offense was an absolute shredder, and I think that's probably a part of it. They got to put with d'Arnaud. Somebody brought up d'Arnaud a minute ago. With d'Arnaud being able to, on his days he's not catching, not just have one at bat, have 3 or 4, that's a difference maker. So, yeah, I think the DH would be a good thing for the National League in the future. Obviously, I do like the old way to some degree, just because that's the way we've always watched. But, yeah, I think it would be good. I think it would be better for the game. Because, look, at the end of the day, no one wants to watch Sean Newcomb hit. Look, I love Sean Newcomb, but no one wants to watch him hit. No one wants to watch, Max Fried. Obviously, I'd like to watch him run the bases again. But, I'm not really wanting to see him hit. I want to see a guy that can make a difference in the game. So, yeah, I think it would be good for the Braves. Let me see. Yeah, Justin Redmond, I agree. They just are testing the guys, seeing if they are MLB ready. Yeah, that's what they got to do. They got to test. They got to look. Even if they're not MLB ready, they're seeing what potential's there. They're testing guys that are in the minors that you're not gonna see this year. They're having a competition. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Yeah, Jameson, I see you agree with me that these games don't matter, but let's focus about on individual performance. Completely agree. We are going to get out of here. This is going to be kind of a shorter show. Pretty much got everything out that I needed to get out. If you have a question you want me to answer, get it out there, and I'll answer it. We are going to move an autograph of the day here pretty soon, but I'm going to answer these couple questions, and then I will be out of here. All right, Mad Tyler, what do you think about Drew Waters on the base pass so far? It seems like he's really trying to make this roster and earn his role. Yeah, Drew Waters, unfortunately, like I just said, is in a weird spot where there's not a spot on the Major League roster that's just readily available for him. For Pache, he had to beat out Ender Inciarte, right? In theory, he's still doing that. But Ender Inciarte is a lot easier. I've got to watch my words here, but it's a lot easier to beat Ender Inciarte than it is to beat Marcell Ozuna, who's on a 4-year deal and making a lot of money. It's a lot easier to beat Ender Inciarte than it is to beat Ronald Acuna, who's the star franchise player, equivalent to Tatis for the Braves, and in theory. And now it's hard to beat Christian Pache to some degree. So he's in a weird spot, almost waiting for someone to get hurt to prove himself at the Major League level. That's why I think it would be good for a DH. But there's a lot of prospects like that. Trey Harris is a guy that can flat out hit the minors. Michael Harris isn't that far away. A lot of guys like that in the minors. Unfortunately, they got to wait for their opportunity, and it might be a long time coming. Let me see. Great hustle from Waters today. Oh, you asked me about his aggressive base running. That's what I want to see. That's what having competition at spring training does. It makes you feel like you got to earn it. That's a good thing, and it's something that the Braves don't have, all to themselves. I'm sure there are other teams that have that, but that's something that the Braves really embrace is competition and earning your spot. You also ask, I think d'Arnaud and Albies are the most underrated players at their positions in MLB. What do you think? I think Freddie Freeman was very underrated before this year. until Bryce Harper said on national TV that him and Anthony Rendon are the most underrated players in the league, and he was right. Until that was brought up on a national television level, it wasn't really talked about. We all knew how good Freddie was. It's not like Freddie, he had a best year of his career this year, but it's not like he had a crazy outlandish year compared to the years prior. He had another consistent year. It just happened to be the best. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is a one-time thing. No, this is what he's been doing for the past few years, and no one really talked about it. So I think Freddie Freeman was pretty underrated. I think obviously Ozzie Albies is. I think I would say Marcell Ozuna is to some degree. Obviously he's getting a lot of attention now, but he was pretty underrated. I'm trying to think. Dansby, he doesn't get talked about in the same regards as a lot of other shortstops do. And he's not Javi Baez by any stretch, but he is a consistent shortstop with a decent bat. He's a bit underrated. I think Max Fried, Mike Soroka, to some degree, underrated. I think a lot of the Braves are underrated, and it's because they're so young. It's not their fault. They haven't done anything wrong. They're just young. Freddie Freeman being underrated, completely an embarrassment. I think a lot of your bullpen is yet to be seen. They're not underrated necessarily, but they're unknown more so than they're underrated, I think. But A.J. Minter, of course, had a great year last year, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that soon. I think a lot of these prospects are underrated as well. Christian Pache, obviously he's out there. We all know about him. We've all heard about him. He's not going to be underrated necessarily, but he hasn't, really proved himself yet. So I think a lot of your Braves aren't going to be talked about in the same regard as some of the other stars across the game. How in the world could Fernando Tatis be underrated? He just made $300 million or whatever he just made. There's no way he's underrated. But compare that to a guy like Ozzie Albies, who is a very good second baseman, a very, very good second baseman on a sweetheart deal. It's hard to compare those two. Underrated, underpaid, whatever word you want to use. I think they proved themselves on the field, personally. At their positions, I agree with you, though. Darno Albies. Darno is a very underrated catcher, I would agree. A lot of talk about JT Realmuto. Show me JT Realmuto's stats last year compared to Travis Darno's. Anybody? Didn't think so. Yeah, I agree with you. Hope we re-sign Travis for next season. A lot of talk about Darno in the chat tonight, and I like it. I am a big Darno fan. I think he's a guy that just goes out there and does his job and performs. And he's a very, very, very underrated player, unfortunately. Who do you think will sign Shane Green? There's a rumor out there that the Braves are still in on Shane Green, and it wouldn't surprise me necessarily if the Braves are still in. It would surprise me that it's been so quiet for so long, but it would not surprise me if the Braves were still in and still having those conversations, because this is the same situation it was with Ozuna. How in the world has someone not signed Ozuna? How in the world has another team not went and got Ozuna? I'm sitting here thinking Shane Green was one of the best relievers in baseball last year. How in the world has someone not went and got Shane Green? Maybe he's just in conversation with the Braves, or maybe he's in conversation with someone else. But I'd like to say the Braves, but who really knows at this point? At the moment, you got to play him like he's not going to be here. But I don't know who necessarily will sign him. I do know that John Lester is going to be out for a little while for the Nationals. Maybe they might see a pitcher they need. Obviously, that's a starter and reliever, but maybe someone that needs a reliever will go get him. But right now, I don't see a reason why the Braves couldn't get him unless the money's just that tight. I just can't see it. I don't know anyone else personally. Let me see. Sandoval was signed about playoff time, had a few at-bats. He had one today, I believe. Yeah, he's had a few at-bats in spring training. But I think Sandoval, at the end of the day, the guy has a wealth of knowledge. There's nothing wrong with bringing a guy with that much knowledge about the postseason, that much career knowledge. He might not make your roster, but I don't mind it. I felt the same way about Felix Hernandez, and I still feel that way. Unfortunately, Felix didn't hang around for the season, but anytime you can bring a veteran around, you never know what that could rub off on someone, right? Maybe the way he swings the bat, maybe the way he thinks about the game, whatever it may be. There's nothing wrong with having that guy around. Do I think he's going to be a star of the show? No. Do I think he could still hit? Maybe. I think he might be a bench bat, but I think it's more so competition, more so than anything. I think it's competition. Tyler, what end of the season stats do you expect from Drew Smyly this year? I'm gonna say ERA wise, somewhere between 2 and 3, probably. Other than that, I mean, ERA is really the only stat I can give you an average on. I don't think he's a number 5 pitcher, right? To me, I'm not a guy that really likes to focus on individual stats, unless in terms of pitchers a lot of the time, because I can't really predict how many wins they're going to get. I can't predict how many strikeouts they're going to get. It's just a very fluid number a lot of the time. ERA, though, I'll tell you, I think 2 or 3 averaging if he's healthy. And if he's consistent, I think 2 or 3. He had about around a 3 ERA last year, and I think once you get him in the same rotation as guys like Charlie Morton that he can bounce things off of, Ian Anderson, Mike Soroka, a solid rotation, and a good pitching coach. I think it might be able to, and it's another year of experience. I think he might be able to better that, but I believe he had around a 3 ERA last year, and that's about where I would say he'd probably be this year. I appreciate that, Justin. Jameson, yeah, that's why I think the Braves get overlooked, because the team does not have a lot of guys that are real flashy or cause a big stir, because they just got to go out and carry about their business. Yeah, that's completely true. I think the Braves do a magnificent job in just carrying themselves. I think that a lot of that has to do with, upper management. A lot of that has to do with leadership on the team. Freddie Freeman, perfect example. And before him, I think Chipper Jones did a very good job at handling himself on the field. He was very mild-mannered on the field a lot of the time. Even when he hit a homer, he put his head down and kept running. He didn't bat flip, and I have no problem with that. You don't want him to bat flip, don't pitch him up, give him a pitch right over the plate, So I think that the Braves just don't really do that. I think also marketability has something to do with it. Fernando Tatis is a very marketable guy. So is Ronald Acuna, but Fernando Tatis also speaks English. So it's also market size. There's a lot of factors. But personally, I think the Braves do a very good job at handling their business on the field. And it is what it is. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a while before we really see a Brave take the star. And look, Freddie Freeman's the MVP. What else you need? You really need him on video game covers? I don't. I'm good with whatever he does on the field. So, we are going to move into autograph of the day here in just a second. And I got a pretty good one. Got a Braves-related one for you today. I appreciate it. Before I go, though, before we do anything, this segment is sponsored by Llerandi Gloves. So let's talk about them for a second. Llerandi Gloves, go check them out, guys. The information is right here. LlerandIGloves.com. High-quality gloves, a lot of good leather, customized 18 different colors, I believe. A lot of different colors. And look, I'm going to give you an up-close and personal look at this thing. Now, I believe I'm getting a new glove actually in the mail at some point this week, which will be very nice. I'll do maybe an unboxing video or something to show you guys that glove. This one is, of course, black and red. It's got Llerandi right there. But look, you can get your name, you can get your team's name on that spot. You can get your number right there. And, of course, there's another spot right there where you can get whatever you want to say, whether it be your favorite Bible verse, favorite quote, whatever it may be. You can get whatever you want and customize it fully to how you want your glove to be. They have all different styles, all different colors, all kinds of things out there. Go check them out, www.LlerandIGloves.com. Those guys are absolutely great over there, and they want you to love your glove as much as you love baseball. So that's all there is there. We're going to move into autograph of the day. Again, appreciate you guys being active in the chat. Does make my day. But we are going to move into autograph of the day. And again, got a very good one for you. Got a Braves related one for you. And if you're a longtime Braves fan, you're going to know the exact moment I'm talking about. If you don't know this moment, go look it up. We're going to show you in just a minute. I believe it was 1992, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was 1992. Braves were about to head to the World Series. They were facing off against the Pirates. And Sid Bream's on second, Dave Justice is on third base. They're down by 1, and Francisco Cabrera comes to the plate. Francisco Cabrera is a guy that didn't have a lot of at-bats. Didn't have a lot of at-bats before this anyway. And then proceeds to hit a base hit, line drive, base hit down the left side. And brought in Dave Justice to tie the game. And Sid Bream, by the way, was not a very fast runner. He was on second. He takes the round at third, makes it home, call it the play to safe, and the Braves go to the World Series. It's a moment that should be etched in your mind if you're a Braves fan. I hope I explained it well if you're not. But this is one of my favorite balls that I've actually gotten in person. Okay, this is not one that I bought. This is not one that I've traded for. This is one I got in person. I'm going to show you real quick. See if we can get it where you can see it. On the top there is Sid Bream. He gave me a Bible verse, Isaiah 4:10. And on the bottom is Francisco Cabrera. So I have a few balls like this that have a story behind it like that, a certain play behind it like this one does. And I think having both of those guys on it, of course, Francisco hit it and Sid slid. So yeah, it's a very just a very good piece to me. It's kind of a conversation starter with any Braves fan that watched that play. So I'll tell you the story behind it real quick about actually getting this ball. Sid Bream and Francisco Cabrera were at Alumni Day a couple years ago. I might have been 16, 17 years old, and I had a few balls in mind, that I wanted to get signed. I think, Dave Justice was there that day. I want to say Ryan Klesko, John Smoltz might have been there. There's a few people that I had in mind, but I wanted this. And there's another ball I have up there. It's signed by Bill Buckner and Mookie Wilson, which is another play. Famous play, not in Braves history, but in Red Sox and Mets history. And it was shaped, I actually bought that one, but this one, it was shaped just like this, with a guy on the top and bottom. And, I was like, you know what, it would be really cool if I could get the Sid play like that. Francisco on the bottom, he hit it. Sid, of course, slid. So, just a really cool ball. Again, I'm going to show you one more time. Sid Bream on the top, Francisco Cabrera on the bottom. Just one of my favorite pieces as a Braves fan. And, if you go to the Braves Museum right now, Sid Bream was wearing a knee brace on that play. And his knee brace is actually, I believe, encased in that walkway at Truist Park. So, it's just a really cool little ball. So, if you're a young fan, you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up Sid Bream. It'll be the first thing that comes up. I promise you it'll be the first thing that comes up. So, go check that out. And, of course, Francisco Cabrera on that ball as well. But the story behind it is I was at Alumni Day, I got it signed, and I told Sid what I wanted. What I wanted to do was, of course, put him on top and Francisco on the bottom. And he did it. He left space for Francisco. And they're at a long table. I get down to Francisco, and Francisco did not speak English. Not a lot of English anyway. And no knock on him, he just could not understand me. And I was trying to tell him, sign on the bottom. Don't move the ball and sign on the other side. Sign on the bottom. He didn't understand what I was saying. So, Sid Bream, I swear on everything, stands up, sees this going on. He's got fans in front of him. Stands up, walks over and says, Francisco, right there. Right there. And I felt so bad. But it was kind of a funny moment. Francisco was laughing about it. And, it was just a good little moment for me. Made my day. I got a cool ball out of it. And I thought it would be a funny story for you guys. So, yeah, we're going to get out of here, guys. I appreciate you guys all being active in the chat. It really makes this worth doing. And, again, thanks to my friends over at Llerandi Gloves. Go check them out. www.Llerandi Gloves. Link will be in the description below. Really appreciate you guys doing that. Again, spring training, really fun to talk about. Go check them out. I'll actually be heading down there pretty soon. I'll be heading down to Northport and a couple other fields on the way and on the way back. Don't tell anybody, but you may see me go live from spring training here pretty soon. So that'll be a very exciting time. Hopefully I'll have some access to some degree. Obviously, that COVID keeps us all away from things. So hopefully I'll be able to, get some access and show you guys what's going on down there at Cool Today Park. Maybe get some interviews while I'm down there. But I'm going to head out, guys. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Always causes for a good live stream. And I think I've been with you guys a little bit too long. So really appreciate it. Going to hop out. Thank you guys for being active in the chat. We really appreciate it here at On Deck.